So, the Supreme Court has elected to overturn Roe v. Wade pretty much in its entirety. What does this mean? Well, it means, of course, a grave threat to abortion rights, because even though things are remanded to the states, let's recall that we now have states trying to make it illegal for their citizens to even go to other states to get an abortion. So we see that even though they use the language of let's go ahead and let the states make their own decisions, the states are trying to make decisions for other states as well. This will not stop here. Marsha Blackburn, in the Ketanji Brown Jackson hearings, brought up the Griswold case. She said, why is Griswold rightly decided? Now, for those of you who don't know Griswold versus Connecticut was the case that established the right to birth control for married families, which was previously illegal in Connecticut. This is important not just because of birth control, but because it established a right to privacy. That right to privacy was the building block for Roe, for Obergefell, for Lawrence, and a host of other decisions. We have heard many, many times that conservatives have said there is no right to privacy enshrined in the Constitution. So what happens if this right to privacy falls? Well, we see that we lose our right to decide if we're going to carry a pregnancy to term. We could well lose our right to be married if we are of the LGBT community. We could well lose our right to have private consensual sexual relationships because that decision built on Griswold, built on Roe. We could lose the right, if we're heterosexual couples, to even buy birth control. Okay, here's the deal now. This is not just the LGBT community's fight. This is not just straight women's fight. This is not yet the Black community's fight, even though it will disproportionately impact communities of color. This is everyone's fight who loves democracy and cares about human rights. This is a decision by a court of 9 unelected justices. Well, let's say at least 5, maybe 6. We don't know how Roberts is going to decide yet. People who were appointed under the sketchiest of circumstances, who have decided to contravene the will of 70% of the United States. 70% of people favor marriage equality. 70% of people favor a woman's right to choose. This number kind of comes up over and over. But this court doesn't care. This court cares about what this court wants. It's no mistake that the same space of days, we saw them lean favorably toward a coach that forced his players to pray with him on the field, that we saw them rule against a community where a public flagpole was used to suspend a Christian flag, and now we see them ruling against the right to choose. What's next? Is it your rights? It could be. It's time to get out of the silos of thinking that every little public interest group controls all of civil rights. We must fight for all of our rights for ourselves and for each other. It is only by protecting other people's rights that we protect our own. We've got to close ranks and protect Obergefell. We've got to close ranks and protect Griswold. We have got to work to reverse Roe versus Wade. There's a lot of things we can do. First and foremost, we can vote. But even before we can vote, we can protest. We can try to access our members of Congress, so that gets harder every year. We can make sure that we make our voices heard as much as possible. As long as there are political solutions to be had, we need to pursue every single avenue legally that we have for a political solution. And that means working with organizations like Planned Parenthood Action, like working with the ACLU, like working with the NAACP and the Southern Poverty Law Center, We have organizations that can help us. We can reach out to the medical community, to ACOG, to the American Medical Association, to the American Psychiatric Association, to those physician organizations that carry a great amount of clout and understand the needs to be able for people to have the right to choose, for them to have the right to safe access to birth control, for them to be able to have gender-affirming treatment, for them to be able to simply live their lives without threat of criminal prosecution over their romantic relationships. So I encourage you, if you're not registered to vote, go register. If you're registered, get other people registered to vote. Find out who the candidates are in your community. And you know what? It doesn't even matter who the candidates are in your community. Show up, vote Democrat straight down the ticket. Not every Democratic candidate is perfect. Believe me, I live in Arizona and I made the mistake of voting for Kirsten Sinema. But I'm guessing that she's probably not as bad as the Republican who might have gotten there in her stead. If you vote for enough Democrats, Kyrsten Sinema won't matter anymore. So we need to elect a filibuster-proof majority. And then once we've done that, we need to reform the rules in the Senate so that we don't have to have the Senate completely locked up every time there is something that the opposition doesn't like. It doesn't mean we can't have a filibuster for important things, but we need to curtail it so that it can't be abused like it's being abused right now. We need to call for accountability in the media. We need to demand civil rights and make sure that people understand those rights are not negotiable. We don't compromise on civil rights. You can compromise on zoning laws. You can compromise on how far a septic line should be for an electrical line, but you don't compromise on human rights. So please join us. There's a lot of organizations involved right now. Act Blue, the Democrats, join the union.us. I don't speak for any of them. I speak for me, but I encourage you to get involved because there isn't much time. And if you don't, it'll only be your fault if you're living in an authoritarian society.